Welcome fibre friends, you've stepped into Spellbound Stitching, where I seek to weave a little bit of magic into every stitch, twist or skein. This is my very first episode. I thought I would give podcasting a go and give another voice to a New Zealand knitter and put a face to the name for everybody who already knows me as Broomstitch. So my name is Kat and I'm an avid crafter, dabbling in knitting, crochet, cross-stitch, patchwork, dressmaking, baking. I'm also an indie dyer and I've just started my journey into a bit of knitwear and crochet pattern designing as well. And by day I work full-time in cybersecurity. You can find me on Lavallee as Broomstitch, or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Broomstitch NZ. You can check my online store at broomstitch.co.nz and contact me by email, DM me by social media, or comment below on this video. So before we dive in to my enchanting podcast, I'd love it if you like what you see here today, if you'd cast a quick thumbs up or give my video a like and maybe even consider subscribing. This will help keep the creative cauldron bubbling, so to speak, and send ripples of support out so that other viewers like you can find me. So today is the 25th of January 2025, and for my New Year's resolution I decided that I needed to become more comfortable with being uncomfortable when there is a benefit to me, and I shouldn't let my I guess nervousness or anxiety get in the way. So one of the ways I've decided to do that is to start a podcast. So the idea behind the podcast, I guess, is to create a supportive space where crafters, regardless of their skill level or where they're at in their own crafting journey, feel encouraged to share, to ask questions, celebrate, connect, and just be creative with me. I'd like to provide an authentic look behind the scenes at my own journey and create a little bit of a visual diary for myself. I guess I'd like to inspire some magical making and encourage you guys, my viewers, to infuse your own crafting with intention and positivity. I'd also like to promote a bit of self-care through crafting. I'd like to emphasize how calming and meditative knitting can be, and other crafts and practices that just nourish our mental well-being. They can foster a sense of peace and focus and self-expression, and that's exactly what they do for me, and I'm hoping that it will do the same for you. You'll have to excuse me if I'm looking down a little bit. I am a bit nervous, so I did prepare myself some quite extensive notes. I thought I'd probably start with talking a little bit about me. My journey into crafting started very, very early on in my childhood, which was influenced by my incredibly clever grandmother, Barbara, who taught me how to knit when I was about 3. And although she passed away before she could teach me much, my love of crafting was carried on through my mum, who introduced many new crafts and skills and helped me build and foster the ones that I already had. Crafting has always been a huge part of our lives and our activities as far as I can remember. So as with anything, my crafting has evolved and expanded. So crochet became a really big part of my life when my daughter was born 15 years ago. And I taught myself how to do that off YouTube videos. And then a few years ago, I discovered the world of indie dyeing and fell down the massive rabbit hole that is, full of colour, texture and creativity. And so I decided to give yarn dyeing a go. I also used to exclusively wear black So having a chance to play with some of these beautiful indie dyed yarns is allowing me to add colour to my wardrobe. I've also taught myself recently to knit continental style, which has sped up my knitting immensely from previously English style knitting, and that knitting's kind of become my intense passion over the last 2 or 3 years, but crochet and other crafts are always still in there. I'm a bit of an obsessive knitter, and I try and knit daily, and I definitely feel it when I haven't had the chance to knit, and I get a little bit antsy. But I guess a big part of my job really is about following rules, because one of my key areas is compliance. So having the creative freedom to play with colours in my knitting and in my dye studio gives me that creative outlet that I need. So I think I'll talk a little bit more about myself every episode so that you guys can get to know me. I'm kind of gonna try and keep a similar structure so you know what to expect and you can skip the parts that you're not particularly interested in. But I guess I'll kind of stick to the traditional knitting podcast format, which is starting with what I'm wearing. So this is my Tea Time sweater by Park Williams of PetiteKnit. The pattern comes in 9 sizes. And I've knit it in Amano Yarns Samay, which is 60% Pima cotton and 40% rayon from bamboo. It is a 5-ply yarn, and there's 250, or sport weight, there's 250 meters per 100 grams. This color is called Purple Summer. The number is 7213. I knit the size 3 on 3.75 and 4mm needles. And the gauge for this pattern is 16 stitches in 24 rows per 4 inches or 10 centimeters. I bought the yarn when I went over to Melbourne in October last year to attend a concert for my daughter, and I had to check out at least one local yarn store, so I bought this from Maker in New Brunswick. I started it on January the 2nd and I finished it on January the 8th because I just couldn't put it down. I would say using wooden needles would probably have been a really good idea. This is knit in the round top down in a lace pattern. I knit them on my Chalgu twists, stainless steels, and I think having wooden needles would have helped with the slipperiness of the yarn, because it did come off the needles a few times, and trying to pick lace back up is quite something. The lace blocks out a lot if you're making this, so make sure you do a swatch and block it before you get into it, and just be very aware that it does. And because I've used a bamboo cotton blend, I have ended up making the cuffs a little bit too tight, like there's not a whole lot of room in there, but that's okay. I can still get it on and off, and if I really wanted to, I have some leftover yarn that I could use. I bought 3 skeins and I used 2.5. So I guess the next step in my podcast is going to be to tell you what to make up. You might notice the purple theme carrying through, but I have some Honey and Sons mulled plum cider tea that is a New Zealand company, and this is a lovely spicy fruity cup of tea, and I'll be using it to wet my whistle as we go through the podcast, since I think I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. Cool. I'm going to focus mostly on finished objects and things from 2025, maybe the very end of 2024, and I figure I'll just wear a different knit throughout so you can see previous finished objects, or I might do a roundup video if that's something you're interested in, previous projects. If you want to have a look, let me know. So I guess we'll start with my Rocket Tee by Tannis Lavallee from Tannis Fiber Arts. This pattern is a t-shirt that is intended to be knit in 1 strand of fingering and 1 strand of mohair and striped, but I decided to do it in 2 different fingering weight yarns. There is 11 sizes in the pattern, and I made it in some Christmas colors from the 2023 drop from Witchfire Fibre Company in her classic fingering. So that's a 3-ply yarn. There is 490 yards, which is about 450 meters per 100 gram skein, and that is in 100% superwash merino. The colors are cheer for the red. You can see it's got a lovely eyelet detail going down the sleeves. Yeah, the red is cheer, and the speckled red and white is called Grandma's Peppermints. So the intention for this is basically to be a Kiwi Christmas sweater, because we have New Zealand and has Christmas in the summer. But I still wanted to wear something knitted, so I'm going to make a point to make a few Christmassy type knits to wear. Normally the pattern has eyelet detail down underneath the arms as well, but I chose not to do that. I didn't want the eyelets running down the side of the sweater, so it's just kept to the raglan. It's knit in the round, top down, and it has I-cord edging. So I did red for the ends of the sleeves and down the bottom, and I chose to do the contrast around the neckline. In hindsight, I probably should have done the contrast on all of them, because I really like how it looks on the neckline. But anyway, I like a V-neck. I don't tend to like things that are really up close around my neck unless it's really intentional, like a really high neckline or a turtleneck. But yeah, a V-neck is always my favourite. I knit it on 3.75mm needles. I didn't change for doing the I-cords because I tend to do those quite tight. Don't know why, but I strangle my needles, so I left it on something larger. The gauge for that one's 24 stitches and 30 rows, and I knit a size 2. I started that one on the 22nd of December and I finished it on the 31st, so right on New Year's Eve. I've just realised my other finished object is sitting over there, so I'll just grab it. I will say I was left with this much of each of the 2 skeins of yarn, so it only took 2 skeins of fingering to knit my size. So the next FO was intended to be a gift, but I didn't get it done in time, and also because I was naughty and I didn't gauge swatch, it turned out much bigger than it should have. So this is the Fern Lace Cardigan by Patons Australia. It is knit in Broadway hand-dyed merino sock, so it's a 4-ply fingering weight, and that's 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. There's 357 meters per 100 grams, and the colorway is Candy Delight. So I knit the size 12 months, but it's turned out big enough to fit a 3-year-old. So I'm holding on to this for my niece's next birthday. The modification I made is I made the sleeves short, so she can just wear it as a light summer cardigan, because her birthday's heading into summer in the spring. Wear it over dresses and things like that. My favourite thing is the cute little buttons that I found that have a beautiful sparkle in the pink, so it ties in nicely with the yarn. I also really like how unintentionally the button band has striped. So this was a pieced knit and then sewn together. I blocked all the pieces before I attempted to sew them together because it was just scrunching up and curling with the lace, and I couldn't see for the life of me what I was trying to sew. I used a mattress stitch, and you piece it together by the shoulders first, and then you sew the button band on, and it is a double-sided button band, double knit, and you do up one side and then you bind off, and you do up the other side and bind off, and then you sew it together in the middle. So that was a new thing for me. And then you sew the sides together and put the bottom ribbing on, and then you attach the sleeves. So I used 2.75 and 3.75 millimeter for that one. The gauge is supposed to be 30 stitches, 36 rows. I didn't even bother measuring what mine was, but I got the yarn from the Fox's Cottage in Foxton, because that's on the way to my parents' house, so whenever we go visiting I have to stop in. Yeah, I think that's everything on that one. So the next one is an accessory knit, Heartwarmer Cowl by Justyna Locowska. It's one size, and I knit this one in one of my one-of-a-kind colorways off my website. So the way the one-of-a-kind colorways work is if I'm just playing and just want to do something with a skein, or at the end of a dye session, everything I've rinsed or any dyes I've got left all go in one pot, and then I just chuck a skein of yarn in and see what happens. So this one is knit on my folk sock base, which is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. You can find other yarns of mine on my website. So this was number 3, one of a kind, and it is a multi-stitch cowl. It's got lace at the top, then we've got an interrupted rib section, then a bobble section, then a broken rib section, then a smocking section, and I started to run out of yarn for the bottom one, so that section is called grapes, and I just did one repeat and a very small ribbing on the bottom. This one is a gift knit. It was commissioned by my mum for her friend Colleen, so I'm sending that off to her on Monday, so it might be gone by the time the video gets uploaded. So that was knit in 3.5 and 3.75 millimeter needles. The pattern also called for a 3.25 millimeter needle, and it wanted you to switch between the 3.5 and the 3.75 millimeter needle for the different sections of the cowl. And because I'm a little bit of a lazy knitter, I didn't do that. I just did the 3.75 the whole way throughout and used the 3.5 for the ribbing. I started that one on the 19th of January and finished it on the 22nd of January because there was a bit of a rush on that one. I need to get it over to Mum before she goes to visit her friend. It's knit in the round. I did shorten some of the sections because I thought they were too long, and then at the end I did start to run out of yarn. But that was heaps of fun to do, and I would probably do that one again as a gift knit, just because it's interesting with the changes that happen in each of the sections. And my last finished object is actually still on the blocking mat, so it is a little bit damp, but it is the Rigmor Tee by PetiteKnit, and there is 9 sizes available in that pattern. I knit it in some Malabrigo Makita, which is a merino singles, and some Rowan Kid Silk Haze in the colorway Violet. So that's this one. Beautiful fluffy fabric. When I finished it, I did actually realize it matched my hair pretty perfectly, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so that one will be a beautiful autumn knit. You can see there is a raglan detail going down the front, which I really like. This one was an interesting construction. It was knitted from the bottom up, and then when you got to where the sleeves were, you stopped. You put your stitches to rest, and then you knit the bottom part of the sleeve, and then you attached it to the underarm to continue going up to make the raglan. Yeah, so that was a new one for me. I really like this neckline. You can see there's a lot of thought when you go through the pattern as to how to make this deeper round neckline so it's not too close and high up. And I really like the sleeve length on this one. I might have to knit another one of these in some different colors. So I used nearly 2 skeins of the Malabrigo. That's all I've got left of that one. And I did have to get a 4th skein of the Kid Silk Haze, and I'm left with quite a lot of that, so I'll have to find something else with that to hold double for another project. I got the Kid Silk Haze from Knit World in Wellington, and I got the Malabrigo from Ribbon and Rose in Auckland. Ordered that one online. So that one's done on a 2.25 millimeter needle for the neckline. 2.5mm for the other ribbing sections and 2.75mm for the rest of it. I did have a lot of trouble getting gauge for this one. I frogged it back twice before I got a size that fit me, and I ended up actually doing their size extra small, just so I wanted one that was a bit more close fitting. I probably could have gotten away with the small, but I wanted a certain look so I could wear it to work. The gauge for that one is 22 stitches and 32 rows. So it is, because it's 2 yarns held together, a lace weight and a fingering, it is considered DK. So you could do it with any DK yarn, so maybe I'll have a go doing that one day. I started that one on the 1st of Jan and finished on the 24th of Jan. I'm not including the couple of other times that I frogged it. Yeah, I'm really happy with that one, and I can't wait to wear it. But I think I will have to wear my hair tied up when I wear it, so as to not blend in or camouflage with my tea. Let's have a sip of tea. Okay, new cast-ons. So this one is the Mabel sweater by Locatelli. There's 9 sizes available, and it calls for a 3.25 and a 3mm needle with the gauge of 21 stitches and 40 rows. It's a textured all over waffle stitch raglan, and it was inspired by a TV show character that Hoki was watching. So I've only just started this one a couple of days ago, but I'm really loving having something. It's not quite mindless to knit, but the texture is gorgeous. So I like to have a simpler project on the go, something that's a little bit more complicated, and a crochet project on the go at all times, just for whatever my brain can keep up with. I'm knitting the size 2 in that one, and I am doing it on some Joy of Yarn 100% Polworth from James in Greytown. I'll talk a little bit more about him and his yarns in acquisitions later. But I haven't ever knit anything with 100% Polworth, so I thought I'd give it a go. The colourway is Power, and again, it's purple, but I'm a sucker for a beautiful purple yarn. I'm having heaps of fun with that one. I've finished the first yoke section, and now I'm just working on the next yoke section to build up that raglan. So it is a raglan top down in the round. It doesn't have short rows. It has, you knit back and forth for the first little bit and then you join it up. So I guess that's so it doesn't mess with the waffle stitch pattern. And I am alternating skeins for this one, because I've got 2 that are a little bit darker and 2 that are a little bit lighter. So I want to make sure I don't end up with a stripy looking sweater and getting colour pooling. And that is in my Mrs. Brown's bag that I got from Jody from the Grocery Girls before she stopped doing bags and moved over to doing yarns. And I also got this really cute pin from James's shop when I went to visit him a couple of weeks ago. So the next one I've only very recently cast on, and this is my more complicated knit. It is in my lovely leather bag from Lisa from Unwind and Knit With Me. She is another Kiwi podcaster if you're interested in checking her out. So this one is at the very early stages, like I've only just cast it on. But it is on 2mm and 2.5mm needles, so it is really tiny, and it is a all over cable yoke done in the round, and then it is plain stockinette stitch as you go down. But this one took me a little while to cast on because I didn't end up with the right stitch count, so I did frog it about 3 or 4 times already, which is why it's looking so sad. But we'll get there. So that one is done in Black Wattle Fibre Co yarn in their Sweet Pea base, which is, it looks like a single, but it's very loosely plied. It's 60% merino, 20% alpaca and 20% silk. So that will be lovely. It is fingering weight or 4-ply in the color Rich Emerald. So I'm trying to incorporate some other colors into my wardrobe, not just purple. And I also got that one from Maker Maker in New Brunswick in Melbourne when I went over there last year. And I'm knitting the size 3. So hopefully next time I'll be able to show you some progress on that one. If we go to works in progress, this is ones that have been on the needles a little bit longer, and also next time I'll give you an update on the ones that I showed you this time. So this one I'm making without a pattern. It is inspired by a sweater that one of the band members from Stray Kids that my daughter really loves is wearing in one of their video clips. So I've just named it the Hyunjin hoodie after him. It is knit on Lion Brand Feels Like Alpaca, so that is acrylic polyester nylon blend, purely because A, it's white, well, ecru, and then my daughter's pretty hard on her clothes, so I wanted something that would withstand being a little bit rough, and that could just be chucked in the washing machine and I wouldn't get too upset about it. So where we're at is this is on a 4mm hook. I'm chosen to do it pieced just so I get a bit more structure in the garment, but we're at we've joined it together. And we're doing sleeves. So I'm picking up the sleeves and doing the sleeves. This is an interesting construction because the hood is actually kind of a separate piece that has these 2 long tails that go down the front and a long bit that goes down the back, and it just sort of attaches at the shoulder. So I'm just kind of figuring that one out as I go, but it's just a basic filet crochet, double crochets and chain stitch to make a grid-like pattern. So I started that one on the 23rd of December, and then I'll just keep chugging along on that one. That's my easy crochet project at the moment. So I bought the yarn from Spotlight in Wellington, which is just a chain store that we have in New Zealand. This one is just my train knitting, so I have to commute into work every day at the moment, and so I've just cast on a little pair of socks to do whilst on the train. I got myself some wood needles to try, some Knit Pro Symphony, just to see if I didn't have as much trouble with them sliding off the needles whilst in my bag. Confession, I hate knitting socks. I love wearing knit socks, but I hate knitting socks. I like it better now that I've discovered DPN sock knitting. I used to do magic loop, and I used to do 2 at a time to try and combat the annoyance that I would have for knitting socks, but yeah, no, didn't like magic loop, but liking it much better on double pointed needles. And this is just some opal yarn, sock yarn, so it's 100% wool, and it's in the colorway Fantasy Island Black Dragon 2. I also figured if I bought myself some exciting sock yarn, maybe I would want to play with it a bit more. And I chose this colorway because A, I love dragons, but B, it reminded me of Sally from A Nightmare Before Christmas. So that just goes in a little project bag in my work bag for on the train. I also figured if I'm on the train and I've only got socks, I kind of have to knit them. So we'll see how we go. I might have some socks to show you. I also prefer to do my socks in like a tube with an afterthought heel. I also have really skinny feet, so I have to cast on 56 stitches, but so that I can get my foot into the ribbing and in through the cast on, but then I have to reduce down to 48 stitches for it to actually fit my foot and not be baggy. So if anybody's got tips or great patterns for smaller, skinnier feet, please send them my way. I would very much appreciate it. I am planning to try and delve into some lacy socks or some colorwork socks at some point, but we're not there yet. we'll get the love of socks going first. So normally I would probably go with the what's in the queue section, so what's up next for on my needles, but because I've only got 2 very new cast-ons, I thought I'd just talk this time a little bit about how I use Ravelry. So I religiously use Ravelry to keep track of my stash and keep track of my queue. So you're more than welcome to go and have a look and see what I've got planned and what I've currently got in my stash. I also use the Ravelry app on my phone, which is called Stash to Go. It's not particularly reliable, but it doesn't have any of the moving videos or flashing parts or anything like that that make Ravelry a bit harder to use for people with vision impairments or other disabilities. And you can fully customize the colors and things, so you can make it darker tones if you need something that's not as bright as a white background. But that means I've always got a record of my stash in my pocket. So that means that if I decide I need some more of a particular color, I've got the batch numbers and things like that at my fingertips, and I've got a photo so I can see what I've got if I discover a new pattern or something while I'm shopping. Yeah. So if anybody's got any questions about how to use Ravelry or the app, I'm happy to answer those as well if you need a hand. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about was a couple of new patterns or new designers that I've discovered recently that I'm very excited to knit. So the first one is the Rockhound Sweater by Wool and Pine Designs. I do have the Rockhound vest already in my favorites, but I think I might need to do the pullover version that they've just released this week. So it's a plain sweater with cables down the front in a DK or 8-ply yarn. It needs 3.75 and 4mm needles, so it'll be a reasonably quick knit with 24 stitches and 32 rows across 10cm gauge. I'm very excited to knit this one, but I've got a queue a mile long already. Wool and Pine Designs have very good patterns. I've knitted a few, and when you purchase their patterns you get a link to their community sites, and you also get links to all of the tutorials that they have that relate to the pattern that you've purchased, and they're close up, very well filmed, very handy if you've never done a particular stitch before. I love their designs. I can't wait to knit this one. And the other one that I wanted to bring up is the Hydrangea by Eleanor Mortensen. So that comes in 9 sizes. The Rockhound sweater comes in 10 sizes. I try and pick size inclusive patterns because I think everybody should be able to knit. There have been a few occasions where I've purchased a pattern and then realized that it is not size inclusive because there wasn't that much information available before purchasing. So I tend to just not knit those after I've purchased them. But the Hydrangea by Eleanor Mortensen is an all over colourwork yoke in the round, and then it is plain stocking stitch. Down the gauge is 26 stitches and 34 rows over 10cm, and the needles are, it calls for a 3 and 3.5mm. I have far too many colourwork yoke projects in my queue, so this one's definitely going to be added to the favourites, but I don't know when it's going to be added to the queue. But I just thought it was so pretty with the flowers across the bust that I might have to use one of my spin cycles in my stash to make that pattern a reality. So acquisitions. You've already seen my Mabel's sweater, which is done in this baby. So this is the Pure Polworth base from Joy of Yarns. It's 100% New Zealand Polworth. It is the colourway Power. It was purchased at James's store in Greytown along with some other goodies, and it is a 4-ply or fingering weight. In New Zealand we talk about ply instead of weight, so 4-ply is fingering weight, even though technically ply is the construction. But anyway, so that's my first one. I've never knit anything in Polworth, so I had to give it a go, and I desperately needed to have some of James's yarn in my stash, but it hasn't stayed in the stash very long because I pretty much cast it on immediately. I also bought some Fibra Natura Papyrus, which is a 78% cotton, 22% silk blend. They come in 50-gram balls, and there's 120 meters on each ball. I got that from the Wellington Sewing Centre today because I popped out there just to have a bit of a nosy. And they were $12.50 a ball, and I got 3 of them. And my intention for these is to knit the Remy camisole, because I think they'd just be lovely next to skin, and I need some more cotton summer knits in my wardrobe. I have recently, I also went to Knit World in Wellington City, and they had a sale on, so I acquired a very large bag of Naturally Loyal Vegas tweed. It is a very pale purple with green and purple speckles. I got 10 balls of that one. There is 105 meters per 50-gram ball, so it's about 1,050 meters. So my intention for that is to probably do an all-over cabled cropped sweater. I've recently purchased a spinning wheel that I found on Facebook Marketplace from the Wairarapa Spinners and Weavers Guild. It is an Elizabeth Ashford wheel. So I've just been playing around with that. That's a pretty big acquisition, but because it was a second-hand wheel, it didn't exactly break the bank. But it has been so much fun learning and playing on that. Frustrating, of course, at the beginning when you don't know what you're doing and you're having to figure everything out, but I think I might have got it now. So I had a practice bump that one of the ladies very kindly gave to me. So I've been playing on that, but I also thought that I needed something pretty and fun to play with to get into the groove. So I purchased some Strawberry Patches fibre from Marina. The colourway is Mulberries. Also matches my hair. But this is Corriedale, and the reason I picked Corriedale is it's got a longer staple length for the fibre, and it's a little bit more grippy. The bump I've been practicing on is just plain merino, so it's soft and has a short staple length, so it doesn't hold on to itself very easy, so it's not apparently the easiest thing to learn on. So I thought I'd try something that is still soft and can be worn next to skin, but has that longer staple length and is a little more grippy. And yeah, I mean, it's gorgeous. Hand-dyed purple New Zealand yarn. So Marina, you're going to be my first pretty on my spinning wheel. And she also included a chocolate in my package, which is long gone, and this cute little stitch marker and a lovely little note for me. So thank you very much, Marina. That made my day. It's exciting when you get squishy mail, full stop, but when there's little extra touches in there, it's pretty special. I got a darning mushroom for Christmas. So I did say I hate knitting socks, but I have knitted socks, and I do have gifted knitted socks, and because I love wearing them, the heels and toes on some of them have blown out. So the toe's easy enough to replace because I knit cuff down, so I can just cut the toe off and replace the toe. But the heel, if it's a heel flap and gusset sock, it's not as easy. So you get one of these and you stretch the sock over the darning mushroom, and that allows you to darn over a little bit more of an easy surface. So I've been wanting one of these for quite a while, and I got gifted one for Christmas. And that is just a handmade one from recycled wood that was purchased on felt.co.nz, which is like a a website for New Zealand to sell their handmade craft items. So if you haven't been on there, go and check it out. I find heaps of beautiful gifts on there, and they've just put together their Valentine's Day collection. So you never know, you might find something. There's also some indie dyers on there, and people selling lots of finished objects. And the last thing that I've got to talk about for acquisitions is I got a Lumos knitting light. This was a gift from my work. I guess a little bit of a life update. I recently changed jobs and I started my new job on Wednesday. So the guys at my old job got me a little goodbye gift, and it was a Lumos knitting light. They were very stoked with themselves for coming up with it by themselves. And it was a big surprise for me and a super lovely, thoughtful gift. So thanks to the Defend team in the Wellington office. Another thing I wanted to do in my podcast is do a little bit of an indie of the episode. So what that means for me is either a independent yarn dyer or an independent pattern designer. I'd like to feature somebody from New Zealand every time I do my podcast. And this week, obviously, it's going to be James from Joy of Yarn. I've already talked a little bit about him, but he's based in Cardigan in the Wairarapa, and he has a little in-person bricks and mortar store in Greytown. He's also got an online store. One of James's claims to fame is he knits these little mushrooms and he places them around in public places for people to find them. So that's a bit cute, and that you should definitely check out his Instagram and see all his cute little mushrooms that he leaves around the place. He had a podcast for a little while. I don't know if he's still planning to continue it, but it gives you great insight into James and who he is and what he loves, and he talks a lot about his travels that are related to knitting on there, and you also get to see his gorgeous cats on his podcast, on his videos. So he named Joy of Yarn after his mum, which I think is just beautiful. And as you can see, James is a staunch advocate for the rainbow community, which is fantastic. We need more voices out there too. So he does indie dyeing. He also sells some commercially dyed yarns with a focus on Scottish and Shetland yarns. And he has things like Sugar and Cream Cotton and Lana Grossa and a few other mainstream yarn brands. He sells lots of pins and stitch markers and knitting accessories in his store, and he's got his own little project bags, and the bases that he dyes his yarns on are Polworth, a Lincoln Merino sock, a superwash sock, Arapawa, which is a New Zealand sheep breed, and a possum merino. Also, if you pop onto his website, you can sign up for his newsletter, because James is very active in the knitting community, and well, yarn community, crafting. And if you get a chance, I definitely recommend popping into his store, but I also recommend that you go kind of early because he does get pretty busy. So check out his website. That kind of is a nice segue into the next section that I wanted to talk a little bit about, which is upcoming events. So in New Zealand, we have Unwind Retreat that used to happen every year in the South Island. But the format for that has now gone to every second year. So what James from Joy of Yarn is doing is he's setting up an in-between every second year event. So this is the Wairarapa Wool Weekend. And that's going to happen this year on the 20th to the 23rd of March. And it's his first one. So every second year, the idea is he'll host this wool weekend in a different Wairarapa town. This year is Greytown, and it will be based at the Cobblestones Museum. And the whole idea is to celebrate Greytown itself and what it's famous for, but also pick somewhere else in the world that has had a wonderful influence on wool and knitting, and learn a little bit more about there. So James did an amazing trip to Shetland, so this year we're also learning about the Shetland Islands from Scotland. And the keynote speaker that he has managed to procure is Gudrun Johnson, who is very famous in the knitting world, pattern designer, born in Shetland, very knowledgeable, amazing lady. So that's pretty exciting that she's coming down to little old New Zealand to chat to us. The website for that has just launched this week, and tickets will go on sale on the 28th of January. So the idea is that you have a chance to go and check out the schedule for classes, talks, things like that you might like to attend, so it's not a mad rush when it gets to buying your ticket. The charity partner for the event is the Wairarapa Hospice. And there is a hat pattern that has been designed for the event, so you'd be able to procure that and knit that in advance to wear to the event. It looks very much like the Shetland Wool Week inspired hat pattern, so it is a colourwork pattern. Yeah, I'm very excited about the event, also because there is a traders hall and I am going to be trading at the event. So James handpicked a bunch of traders that had some sort of link to Scotland or as a teacher or instructor for any of the classes, and he asked if I would be interested, so I was very privileged to say yes. So I will be there. So that's, if you go onto his Joy of Yarn website or the Wairarapa Wool Weekend website, you can sign up for the newsletter there, and you can get to the Wairarapa Wool Weekend website from James's Joy of Yarn site. Everything that I talk about in my episode I will include in show notes. I will be adding them as like a blog post on my website, but I'll also put them down below on the YouTube video. So if I miss anything, please let me know, and I'll drop you a link and update the content. Something I'd also like to share is a little bit of a crafter's tip every time. So one of the things that I recommend that everybody does when winding yarn into a cake from a skein is to double cake or double skein your yarn. So what that means is once you've put the skein of yarn on your winder and you've wound it up into a cake and it looks like one of these, then I recommend, especially if you're not going to get to your project straight away, to double cake it, which means take the end out and then cake it again. And what that does is it creates a much looser cake of yarn so that the fiber's not stretched tight, because if you leave yarn in a cake for too long that is a tight cake, it can actually stretch the fibers out and change the weight of your yarn. And maybe even potentially cause damage. So by double caking it and making it just a little bit looser and squishier, it stops that from happening. And it's also, in my opinion, easier to knit from because the wool's not holding onto itself quite so tightly. So that's just a little bit of a crafter's tip. And because of what I do for my day job, I also thought it might be applicable to share a little bit of a cybersecurity tip. So a lot of the things that I do for work are definitely transferable to home. And if there's anything in particular you want to know that I can answer, please let me know and I will include it in the next video. But I guess the first tip that I'm going to give is to do with passwords. Everybody uses passwords. Everybody knows them. Everybody hates them. They're kind of like the keys to your digital kingdom, right? So it's like you have keys to your house. A password is a key to anything that you access online. And one of the biggest tips that I give to people, because lots of platforms or services make you choose a password that's 8 characters and complex, is to make it as long as possible and something that's easy to remember for you, because longer is stronger. A short password that's complex, say 6 characters, that has an exclamation mark and a number and a capital letter, is going to be much easier to crack than something that is 20 characters long with no complexity. It just, the way that passwords get hacked these days is not manually done. It's done by computers that run through automated cycles to test everything that we know about common ways that people put passwords together. So the point in making it longer is it takes longer, and people give up because you're no longer a viable target anymore because you're taking too long. It's not worth their time. So longer is stronger. And you can make it a passphrase instead of a password, so it's easier for you to remember. So you can type it out. So it might be a lyric from an obscure song that you listened to 20 years ago, or it could be a line from a book. As long as it's not commonly associated with you and it's not easy for anybody to guess, something that's long and easy for you to remember is a much better option. I'd also stress that you need to have a different password for each login that you have. The reason for that is if somebody manages to get hold of one of your passwords, if you've reused your password for lots of other things, then they can get into all those other accounts, and anything they find linked to you, they'll try with that same password. So because we have to have long, unique passwords for everything, and we all know that there's so many passwords that you have to remember, another good thing to get yourself is a password manager, and that's just a little app on your phone. Set a really long password for that one, and then you kind of only have to remember one password because everything's stored in that app, and you can just copy and paste into your browser or into your apps on your phone. If anybody wants any more information about this stuff, please feel free to reach out or leave me a comment below and I can elaborate more in the next episode. Because I am an indie dyer and I would like to talk a little bit about my dyeing and my shop, I thought I'd feature something from my repertoire or stash each week. So this week's featured skeins are going to be my colorway Stargazer. Now I have a signature collection on the website which consists of a few colorways that I reproduce over and over again because they're pretty popular. So this week's featured skein is called Stargazer, and it is available on my website on my hereditary fingering base, which is a 4-ply yarn, and my half DK base. Now this one is the fingering weight is a sock, so it's 80% New Zealand superwash merino and 20% nylon, and the DK is 100% New Zealand merino. And there is 220 meters on this one per 100 grams and 400 meters approximately on this one. So it is a grey base yarn, and you can see it's got multicolored speckles. It's one of my favorite colorways that I have. I absolutely love this one. And I do have a finished object knit in this yarn, so I will try and insert a photo so that you can see what it looks like knit up. Moving on to the last little bits and pieces. So I do have some other hobbies, and one of those is books. So the book I'm currently reading is The Boneless Mercies by April Genevieve Tucholke. So I have only just started this book, so I don't have much of a review at the moment, but it is based in a Northern European type of civilization where it's a group of young women and their job is mercy killings. So it's looking at through life through their eyes. They're hired to kill quickly, quietly, and mercifully, and it's a job that in this culture is exclusively for women. So it's also a little bit of their own inner turmoil. It focuses on the main character Frey, and it's a lot about her internal monologue and her thinking about whether she wants a little bit more out of life. And so I'm interested to see how her journey plays out there. And the other thing is what I'm watching at the moment. So I'll talk a little bit about a podcast that I watch each episode. So this week's podcast is going to be Strawberry Patches. So you've seen Marina's fibre. Marina also dyes yarn, and she also has a podcast. And I thoroughly enjoy watching Marina. I started at the very beginning of her podcast when she was still living in Istanbul, and then she moved to Bali, and now we can claim her as one of our own because she lives in Auckland, New Zealand. She is also a spinner, and she makes toys, so she does sewn dolls, but she also has been doing a lot of knitted toys at the moment on her podcast. I love watching Marina's podcast because she's just so warm and sweet. She's a lovely lady. She gets so excited and passionate about her projects and her yarn, and it just feels like hanging out with a friend. You also get a fair bit of a rundown on local yarn shops she films whenever she visits somewhere new, or the events from the local creative fibre group, and you get a little bit of a glimpse into her home life some too, and her beautiful girls feature on the podcast occasionally as well. So if you haven't already, go and check out Marina's podcast. She's a Russian lady originally, but we're glad to have her as one of our own in New Zealand now. And she was one of the people who helped me to get this podcast idea going. So thank you for all your support and your tips and tricks, Marina. Yeah, I guess the only thing left is I'd like to connect with you guys on social media or via this channel or wherever you can find me, Ravelry, because one of the things that I would like to do with the podcast is to connect with fellow like-minded crafters and build up a little community, or insert myself into an already existing one where possible. So I guess if you've got any feedback on the podcast, anything you want me to share, anything you want me to talk about, or anything you want a bit more of or you really didn't like, please let me know. Yeah, I'm excited for what this could bring, and hopefully I stick with it and I don't give up and get a bit scared, but fingers crossed. So that's all for today. I hope you've been inspired by something that you've seen here. Thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of time with me. I hope it's been good to get to know me and put a face to the name. I don't tend to post my face on social media an awful lot because I'd like the focus to be on the projects, to be honest. I deeply appreciate the support, so thanks in advance. I'm hoping this will do well and I'll be inspired to create another episode. But in the meantime, may your yarn never tangle and may your projects always be enchanting. I hope to see you again soon. And remember, a little magic goes a long way. So happy crafting, everyone. I'll see you next time.